Our next guest is making his first appearance on Submission Radio, one of the most exciting strikers in the welterweight division. He's known for his devastating kicks, which has led him to an impressive 20-0 record in kickboxing. Now in MMA, he has a pivotal fight with Johny Hendricks at UFC 196. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, welcome to Submission Radio.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's absolutely our pleasure to have you on the show, Stephen. Now, and welcome to the program. Before we get into it, we have to ask you about your baby. Of course, we're talking about your Supra. How's she coming along?
Oh, my goodness. That is definitely my number one right now. She's doing great, man. You know, I've got some stuff on the way to make it a little bit faster. She's a single turbo, about 530 to the wheels. Got some cams and 1600cc injectors coming and going to turn the boost up.
Nice.
Wow, it sounds like you'll be speeding around. Now, we want to jump back in time to UFC 143 in 2012. You, of course, you made your UFC debut and had a highlight reel finish. People are saying that you were the next big thing in the division. I just want to ask you, when you look back at that moment, do you think your skills were ready to go up against the best guys in the division back then?
Well, you know what? I actually started MMA actually in 2010. Had my first fight. I was already pro in kickboxing, so I couldn't go back amateur. At the time, Georges St-Pierre, Rashad Evans, Nate Marquardt, these guys kind of inspired me to actually switch over from kickboxing to MMA. And in my first fight, I remember just not in the UFC, just first fight period. I had very little jiu-jitsu, very little wrestling. And you know what? To be honest with you, I was just kind of winging it, relying on my striking. Slowly, I got a wrestling coach. And, of course, my brother-in-law, Carlos Machado, started working with me more. My ground game got a little bit better. And I was 5-0 as a pro then. And then next thing you know, the UFC calls and say, hey, man, we want you on this card. So I was very nervous at the time because I felt that I wasn't ready, to move to the UFC. But my dad was like, hey, man, my dad's my main coach. He was like, hey, man, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You don't want to look back and say you wish you actually took the fight. Because if you say no, they probably will never ask you again. And thank goodness I did take it. I really worked hard on my wrestling and my jiu-jitsu at the time. There was still a little bit of doubt, but I went out there and I did it anyway. Ended up having a first-round, KO. And then I remember 2 days after that fight, I got a call back and they said, hey, we want you ready for Atlanta in early April. And I was thinking, it's kind of soon. But we were excited about the knockout and got the bonus that night. So we're like, heck yeah. And then they were like, well, you're fighting Matt Brown. I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, this guy's, he's a monster. He's been in the game for a long time. But you know what? We took it anyway and we learned a lot from it.
Well, yeah, exactly. That Matt Brown fight, it showed some gaps in your skills in that fight. Obviously, how difficult was it for you to catch up in the grappling areas of your game? And was that fight with him the real eye-opener for you?
Oh, yeah, definitely, man. We learned a lot from that fight, with the weight cut. I was walking around at the time about 210 pounds and trying to cut the 170 just killed me. Yeah, and, but no excuses, man. I went out there and I gave it all I got. I told myself this guy's not going to knock me out. He's not going to submit me. Because I remember in the first round, I was done. I had zero legs. I didn't have my legs. I couldn't move. I remember looking over at my dad and him just looking. It's like, what are you doing? I was like, I can't move. But I look back at it now, and I thought I did a lot better than what I was thinking I was doing at the time. Because I only watched it one time after the fight, and here recently I went back, watched it again. I was like, man, I'm such a different fighter now, and more confident in my ground than ever.
Well, Chris Weidman, who you've trained with, went on record and said Stephen Thompson is a serious problem for the welterweight division. What did you think when you saw those comments from Weidman?
Wow, I was literally thinking, wow, man, this is coming from the champion. I was like, it's such an honor, and he's such a good friend. He asked me to come up for his first fight against Anderson Silva. He ended up, of course, knocking him out, and he asked me to come back for the second one, and then Lyoto Machida, then Vitor Belfort, and we slowly started to grow a really, really strong relationship, and he's a family friend now and a good bud, and he actually comes and helps me with my training camps, and tremendously, to be honest, my ground game and my wrestling defense has jumped leaps and bounds just from working with him.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned Weidman, the former middleweight champion. You, of course, also trained with Georges St-Pierre, the former welterweight champion. Who did you learn the most from in terms of using your grappling, proficiently in an MMA environment?
Wow. Oh, you know what? I can't really say. I mean, they're both great wrestlers. And they use their striking very well to get the fight where they want to be, and that's the ground, to get those takedowns. I learned a lot with Georges St-Pierre, because at the time I was strictly kickboxing. They wanted me to come in and be a good sparring partner, a good striker for him, because he was fighting guys like Carlos Condit, Thiago Alves. I helped him out with his fight with John Fitch. So I was up there a lot training at TriStar, helping George out. And of course, I had to change my whole striking, style for the wrestlers. And I learned that from him. And from Chris, it's just the grind that he puts himself through, just the mental anguish he puts himself through in the gym. Nothing phases him. It doesn't matter how hard his workout is. If his body's aching, it doesn't matter. He goes out there. Of course, he trains smart, but he doesn't let any of that. I see a lot of guys make excuses because, I'm feeling a little sore. Oh, you know what? My body's feeling kind of tired and I'm going to take a break. Not with this guy. He's always doing something. He's always training. Even when he's tired, he's always doing something. It may not be really strenuous on his body, but he's preparing for his fight. If it's physically, mentally, emotionally, he's getting ready for it. And that's what I learned from him.
Well, mentioning GSP before, the funny thing is many people think that Hendricks beat GSP in his last fight in the UFC. And now here you are, almost avenging George in many ways. Have you had a chance to speak to him about Hendricks? And if so, what has he told you?
Yeah, we try to get him actually come down here for our camp. That couldn't happen. He has a few teammates up in Montreal. He's getting ready for it. They're also fighting in February, so he wasn't able to make it. But my pops got to, pick his brain a little bit and see what we needed to work on if we were out there, if we were going to face Johny Hendricks. At the time, I wasn't really sure if I was going to fight him or not. I didn't find out till I think it was Thanksgiving. I was actually up in New York training with Chris at the time, and so we weren't really sure if it was going to happen, if it wasn't going to happen. So, but we still called him up, picked his brain a little bit, and he gave us some pointers. And of course, we're back here in South Carolina now. We're working on him.
And just quickly, we got to ask, knowing George, how do you think he'd fare against the current champion Robbie Lawler in a sort of fantasy scenario? How would that fight play out?
I would say George. Obviously, I mean he's I think he's more experienced. I think he's got really good takedowns. He's just a strategist, man. He comes in the fight already won. He really goes into the camp, into the gym, and studies his opponent, and all the way down to the tee, to the little movements. He's got great timing with his takedowns. Of course, a longer reach than Johny Hendricks, but to me, just because he's a good friend and one of the best, I would say George.
Well, speaking about the fight, Stephen, Johny Hendricks was on our program and he said about fighting you, I know I can out-wrestle him. He doesn't know the wrestling that I do, but can I outstrike him? I do believe I can because I've done it and I've proven it time and time again with really, really good strikers. I mean, what goes through your mind when you hear him say something like that?
I don't let it faze me. Of course he's a fighter and he's going to have all the confidence in the world going out there. If he doesn't, he shouldn't be out there. I'm going to go out there and do what I do best. I'm going to try and keep it standing on my feet, and that's what people and the fans want to see. They want to see a good clean knockout, and that's what makes the sport so exciting. I know he's definitely the best wrestler I've faced so far. I've brought in really good guys, really good wrestlers, Olympic wrestlers, coming in to help me with this fight, with my takedown defense. So I feel confident, and you know what? He may take me down, but guess what? I'm going to pop right back up, right back where, and every round starts standing. So he's got to worry about that.
Do you believe that he'll try and fight you in the striking department, like he's mentioned in the interview with us and other interviews? Or do you think it's just sort of a play and really he'll just go straight for the takedown because he knows your credentials in the striking area?
I hope he does. I hope he stands there and wants to bang with me. Yeah, I think he's going to play it smart. He wants to get that title belt, and so do I. So I think he's going to, use his striking, use that left hand, to get me leaning back, to get me to the cage, to take me down. I think that's his strategy. There may be points and spots out there during the fight where he may want to stand and bang with me in the middle. Of course, it's always my goal to keep it there. But we're working really hard on the wrestling, working really hard on movement, distance management. Using my strikes to keep him at bay.
Now, Stephen, many people have been talking about this fight as a mismatch, with obviously Hendricks being a heavy favorite. How do you see this fight going? Where do you think you have the advantage over him?
Well, obviously, I believe it's standing, in the striking area. Using my legs to keep him at bay, using my movement and my long reach and timing. I know he's very difficult to knock out. So I have to be precise. Every technique that I throw has got to be on point. I just gotta beat him to the punch. He likes to throw those big looping punches, and the fastest point from A to B is in a straight line. So if I can beat him to the punch, I know I've got him. So when it comes to the striking, I gotta use my distance and use my timing and speed. I think that's where it lies, and and make sure my shots count. If I hit him in the head or if I don't hit him in the right spot, I've seen him. I mean, he's taken the champion shots. Robbie Lawler's he's one of those type of guys who, one of those one hitter quitter type dudes. He hits you one shot and you're out. And he took a lot of shots, a lot of punishment from Lawler and kept on coming. So, but you know what? It doesn't bother me one bit. I've faced guys like that before.
It's interesting because a lot of people love to do MMA math out there. For example, this guy beat this guy, so that means this guy's going to beat that guy. And obviously, you had some issues against Matt Brown, and Johny Hendricks absolutely destroyed Matt Brown in their fights. A lot of people are saying, look, if Wonderboy had issues against Matt Brown, then he'll definitely have issues against Hendricks. But looking back at where you were in that Matt Brown fight and where you are now, would you say that you're a completely different fighter when it comes to your grappling skills?
Oh, definitely. That was almost 4 years ago when I faced Matt Brown, and of course, like I was saying then, we learned a lot from that with the weight cut and the wrestling, and I think I'm definitely a different fighter than I was then when it comes to the ground and the takedown defense, and I think my other fights have shown that. Facing Jake Ellenberger, facing Patrick Cote, and these guys are veterans, been in the game for a long time, and so I feel that in my heart, I am better than I'm way better. And, I'm just getting ready mentally, physically, emotionally for February 6th.
Well, you've beaten, obviously, Robert Whittaker, who's currently at middleweight and is having a very successful run. Patrick Cote is having a very good run at the moment. And obviously, the Jake Ellenberger knockout was nothing short of spectacular. And now you're facing Hendricks, who many people think was the true number one contender in the division. If you beat him, do you think you'll be calling out Robbie Lawler for a title shot?
Yes, and I think it depends on how I beat Johny Hendricks. If it goes to a decision, if it's a unanimous decision, of course, I feel like I want to try and go for that title shot. If it's a knockout, definitely, I'm going to be calling Lawler out. And over a win over Johny Hendricks, I'm going to be pushing it. I think, the top four guys except for Tyron Woodley has fought for the title. Why not give the new guy a crack at it,
Yeah, well, you versus Robbie would be a great matchup because stylistically it would be a striking war. If you did get a chance to fight Robbie, do you believe you'd have a striking advantage?
Yes. I mean, compared to my style, the way Lawler fights, he likes to stand right there in front of you. And I love to fight guys that stand right there in front of you. My goal is to use the angles and just pick them apart, using my legs and feet together. He likes to throw his hands. He doesn't use his legs very much. Of course, I think he does a few head kick knockouts, but he telegraphs it a lot. But you know what? Like, he's the champion, man. He's a champion for a reason. So I never take anybody lightly. This is just kind of from what I'm seeing right now. Of course, you can say that about fighters and then be completely different feel when you get out there in the octagon, But I feel that I do have a striking advantage.
Now, from everything that we've seen and obviously speaking to you, it's very apparent you're a really nice guy. Don't like to talk a lot of trash talk. Do you think at all, Stephen, it's held your career back as, although you've been on a winning streak, you don't necessarily get as much attention as, say, the Conor McGregors, the Michael Bispings of the company?
Yeah, man, I think so. I'm just not that kind of person. I've never been really good at talking crap. Maybe I can hire somebody to do it for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've just never been that guy, and of course you see these guys like, Bisping and Conor McGregor who are just killing it right now. And it's because, and a lot of it has to do with, beating their opponents mentally, getting in their head with their words. McGregor is one of the, he's very good with his words, he's very intelligent, but, that's just not who I am. And if I go in there and start trying to do that now, people will just be like, "What are you trying to do, Stephen?" Sit down, don't do that. If I came into the sport doing it, then I believe so. It would be different. But running a a martial arts school and being the head kids instructor here, at my family's business. It's just, it's just not who I am and not what I'm about and what I want to teach.
It's interesting because you mentioned that you want to call out Robbie Lawler if you do beat Johny Hendricks, but also do it in a respectful way. Do you find yourself sort of at war with yourself, trying to figure out what the sort of nicest way to do that would be, but also knowing that you do have to sort of shake things up a bit for people to take notice and actually want to give you that title shot? How will you go about, if you do win that fight, sort of stay true to yourself, but also sort of shake things up a little bit? Because unless you sort of get the attention of the media and the people, it's more likely that someone else will get the next title shot.
Yeah, I think you can go about it the right way and still kind of shake it up a little bit without actually, talking about your opponent or belittling him. I think you got to be confident in what you want. Over a win over Johny Hendricks, I'm going to go up and I'm just going to say, hey, listen, I want Robbie Lawler. I think I'm the guy to beat him. And that's not really talking crap. I just feel that I can do that. So being confident and just telling everybody exactly what you want, I think can get it done and come across to everybody and really get eyes on it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go out there and, can I please fight Robbie Lawler? I don't think that would get it.
Yeah, don't beg. Begging doesn't go over well. Well, someone who's been very, very confident in telling people what he wants and how he's going to do it, and we talked about trash talking Conor McGregor, and he's expressed interest in fighting for the welterweight title after he is planning on winning the lightweight title. That's stepping into your yard. How do you think he'd fare in your weight class?
Well, he walks around about 180 pounds, and he looks massive. I mean, he's. Of course, there's a lot of shorter guys in the 170 division. Johny Hendricks being one of them. He's like 5'9", and he's crushing it. And I think he would do well. I mean, his striking's great. I think he would have to put on some muscle just because the guys in the division are just so much bigger. They're walking around at 195, some of them 200, and if you're at 180, yeah, you'll get down to the weight pretty much easier. Pretty easy. But man, I mean, the guys in this division, look at Robbie Lawler. Look how massive that guy is, and he's got great striking as well. So, I mean, I think he would do fairly well. That would be very interesting, just to see. I think, that's what he's looking for. Everybody wants to see how he's going to stack up to these, the 155 and the 170. So that's going to sell tickets.
Well, it's interesting because it almost seems like you're going to be right in the thick of it if he does do it. So we have to ask, since it would be an unreal matchup, how would you see a fight between you and McGregor going if he does make the jump to welterweight? Obviously, his striking is very, very dangerous, but you yourself have a pedigree, close to none in the division as well.
Yeah, man, we have fairly similar style with our stances when, putting our kicks and hands together. He likes to throw side kicks. I like to throw side kicks, hook kicks, things that you normally don't see in a sparring session, People aren't used to seeing that. And that's why we catch guys with it. I think it would be a very exciting fight, to be honest with you. And it would definitely be a striking war, but I just feel like I'm more experienced when it comes to that style. I think I have more tools. He likes to keep his right side forward. I work both sides. I think I have more weapons in my arsenal than he does. So that said, I think I would come out with a win, but it would be really cool to go out there and fight, the best guys, man. And he's definitely one of them. He's shaking it up. He's literally the Muhammad Ali of MMA right now.
Wow, that's huge praise.
Just quickly, Stu, I mean, we've mentioned the trash talk. Do you think that if you do end up fighting him, the trash talk would affect you mentally in the fight? Because we've seen how much it affected his previous opponents. How much of a factor for that would that be for you? And how would you handle dealing with the trash talk of caliber of a Conor McGregor?
I've been fighting since I was 15 years old, and there have been all sorts of characters that I've faced. And, for some reason, it's never bothered me at all. I know why they're doing it, and I know what why they're trash talking, to hype the fight up, to try and get to break me mentally, and I just don't let it happen. I'm myself, and I'm very strong mentally and emotionally. I don't like to think I'm weak in those areas, and I know that's what Conor McGregor, he may or may not do that. I've had the chance to talk with and hang out with him for a little bit in some of the shows, and he's a really nice guy. And but unless you're facing him, it's just something that changes. But I don't care. I really don't care what he says or what anybody says about me in the division or who I'm fighting. What does matter is what happens in that octagon.
Well, Stephen, you say you're mentally tough, but we've got your toughest challenge in front of you just yet. It's the Submission Radio Tapout round. Basically a fun game we play, very simple. We ask a bunch of fun questions, and you answer with the first thing that comes to mind. So are you ready?
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
All right. Wonder Boy Thompson is stuck on a desert island. Name 3 things he brings with him.
I bring with me, stuck on an island.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I would bring water, an Xbox One, and a hot chick.
Xbox One. Where are you plugging this Xbox One in there? Are you going to plug it into a coconut tree or something?
Idea. If I can have anything, there's got to be electricity. See, brother.
There's like a kiosk there on this deserted island.
He's sitting there with the water and the hot chick looking at the Xbox going, I don't think I thought this through.
Yeah.
Now, next question. Give us your favorite line from a movie.
My favorite line from a movie. Wow. Oh, man. I'm definitely a movie buff, but I've never actually had a favorite line. I don't know. I'll be back. That's the first thing that popped in my head.
Well,
I'll be back.
It's a classic, so it's not a bad one. Now, driving your Toyota Supra, we have to ask you to rank your top 3 Fast and the Furious movies.
Top 3 Fast and the Furious movies? Well, the number 1, just because it's the classic. It was the very first one that got it all started. Okay? Number 1, definitely did. The second one was horrible. I just threw that away. I like the last 3 movies, to be honest with you.
Really?
The last 3. Yes, I did. I mean, the last one was okay. I mean, there was a little. I mean, all the Fast and Furious stunts, they're far-fetched.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff is just not realistic, but that's the way those movies are, and that's what makes them the Fast and Furious movies. I did like Tokyo Drift, to be honest with you. That was probably the most realistic one out of all of them. With the car, with the stunts and everything. But yeah, man. 1, I would say the first one, Tokyo Drift, and I think it was Fast and Furious 5 was legit.
I will say this, though. 2 things. You mentioned you like Tokyo Drift. I love how in the last movie, I think it was, they took that footage from Tokyo Drift and didn't change it at all, and then they brought that guy back in from Tokyo Drift, and he'd aged like 1,000 years, and as if they expected no one to notice. And it's like, dude, are you serious? Not only that, but I mean, I'm sure you noticed, but it just seems like the first Fast and the Furious was like the most simple, basic movie. They were like young kids, whatever, early 20s. They were just racing, and then by the last one, they're like secret agents. You've got The Rock, like pulling off a gun. They're going international. Like, I don't know. It's a bit.
And
much.
They go from like high, level criminals to the good guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the worst part, I reckon, I think this was the last movie, was when Jason Statham and Vin Diesel ended up in that car park, and they're like, all right, how are we going to do this? And they decide to drive into each other to see who's toughest. I mean, that was just nuts, ridiculous. Man. It was like, dude, are you thinking? Crazy. I don't know. You need to speak to Vin Diesel about this. I know that he wears a lot of sunglasses indoors when he goes to UFC events, but you need to sort of open his eyes to the realism of driving. Now, moving on to the next question. You were a zombie in the Ranger 15 movie. Out of all the zombies, Josh Thompson, Phil Davis, Stephen Bonner, who made the best one and who made the worst one?
Oh, wow. Okay. There was a Keith Jardine. You guys know who Keith Jardine is?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Keith Jardine he literally looked like the scariest dude out of the bunch. All right.
And then he put the zombie makeup on.
Oh, yeah. Then he he was massive. He looked like one of those just crazy zombies, man. I would say he was probably one of the best. Worst. Oh, man. I would have to say Phil Davis, man. He's such a comic. He's a comedian, dude. When I look at him, it just made me laugh. Like, he didn't scare me one bit. I look at him, he just cracked me up. So Keith Jardine, I would say the scariest. Phil Davis, the worst zombie.
Yeah, there's a big difference between Phil Davis's goatee and Keith Jardine's. Now, this is breaking news. Well, sort of, but not really. Bill Murray is officially running for president. Will Wonderboy consider him during the voting process?
Oh, if he does, that's classic. Let's do it. Yes, I'm checking him. He's definitely president.
Yeah, well, anything's better than Trump, right? Now, moving on to the next question. What is the best karate movie of all time?
the best karate movie, or
Yeah,
just martial arts in general?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I should. I don't know. All right, let's do martial arts in general.
Okay, because if you do karate, it just has to be Karate Kid. I mean,
Right.
that's
Yeah,
just,
that's
that's
just a
just a
stock
given.
standard answer. Yep.
One of my favorites, of course, I love the Matrix trilogy. Of course, the last two movies I didn't like. The first one was the best. Man, have you ever seen Jackie Chan, The Drunken Master?
No.
I've seen some.
You have
clips
not
from
seen
it.
that?
No, we
No.
haven't seen. I've seen some clip. I haven't watched it from start to finish. This is when he was quite a bit younger, wasn't it?
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
it's legit. Like the fight scenes in there are awesome. Which one of you guys? I mean, what do you think?
Well, Mr.
your
Nice
favorite?
Guy was shot in Melbourne, which is where this show comes from. So there's a few
No way.
trams there. Yeah, there's some trams, Melbourne. But I don't know. You're flipping the question on us. This isn't how the tap-out route works, Stephen, quite frankly.
I'm going to save us both and throw in like the typical. This is like the super mainstream answer, but Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I remember watching that as a kid and being
yeah,
I don't know whether it was before Matrix or after Matrix, but it was pretty amazing. The fight scenes at the time.
Yeah,
I have to say, like
loved
recently in the last year, I really and I don't know if this really classifies as a martial arts movie. And Keith Jardine's in
I
this
know
one,
what you're
but
gonna say.
John Wick was a really good movie.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. That had some good
yeah.
fight scenes as well. Yeah.
it was pretty cool because you had some judo in it, you had some jujitsu, throwing omoplatas in there.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law Carlos Machado's brother Hegan did a lot of the stunt choreograph for the fight scene. So it was pretty cool.
Wait, who was your
I
brother-in-law?
know
Sorry?
they're coming out with say that again.
Who is your brother-in-law?
Carlos Machado.
Wow, Carlos Machado is your brother-in-law. Holy crap.
Yeah, he's actually right outside the door right now. He came in this week for my camp. So yeah, man.
Wow.
He married my sister. They got 4 kids together, and they all started training the age of 3 as well.
Holy crap. Star-studded. All right, well, we're not going to take up your whole time, Stephen. We've got 2 more questions, then we'll get out of your hair. Chuck Norris had you as the #1 ranked fighter in 2006 in the World Combat League. Give us your favorite Chuck Norris joke. For example, all right, and we'll start you off here. There used to be a street named after Chuck Norris, but it was changed because nobody crosses Chuck Norris and lives. Or it gets better. If you see Chuck Norris crying, he'll grant you a wish. If your wish is dying...
Oh my gosh.
Now it's your turn.
My favorite Chuck Norris. I used to know 100 of them things like 100 years ago. I don't remember any of them now. I think it was I don't remember how it goes because I'm just going to destroy it. I just know I am.
Mm-hmm.
It had something to do with a giraffe or something. Him uppercutting a horse and it becoming a giraffe. Do you remember how that one goes?
Yeah,
I don't remember how it goes.
Well, that sounds
let's
about
see
right.
here,
If you uppercutted a horse, it would become a giraffe.
that was one of the ones that almost made the cut.
Yeah.
I like Chuck Norris destroy the periodic table because he only recognized the element of surprise.
Good. Nice.
Now, finally,
There was one,
Stu-
go ahead.
go on. We want to hear the other one. Go.
All right, Chuck Norris was an only child, eventually.
I've got one quickly. When Chuck Norris left for college, he told his dad, "Now you're the man of the house."
Another good one was when Chuck Norris turned 18, his parents moved out of the house.
Is that what it went? I like that one.
Now, finally, we're going to let you go because we're having a lot of fun, but we know you got a big fight coming up. Give us your prediction. How are you winning against Johny Hendricks at UFC 196?
Me, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to put my hands and feet together. I'm going to knock him out. That's what's going to happen. I'm not going to call a round. Y'all just going to have to tune in and check it out.
Well, there you go, guys. Well, follow Stephen on Twitter at WonderboyMMA, and of course, see him take on Johny Hendricks at UFC 196. It's going to be February 6th in America, and due to the time difference, Sunday, the February 7th, here in Australia. Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I feel like we've learnt a lot about you, especially, not only just fighting, but especially your movie tastes and your elite level of Chuck Norris jokes. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Hey, guys, it's a pleasure, and hopefully we can do it again sometimes. Y'all have a good one.